Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin', Fantasy Champs? Just throwing my hood on. And I pulled my headset off. Didn't realize how far we were in the intro. So, anyway. Welcome to Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. What's going on, Rick?
What's up?
And today we have trade targets for Week 8. Hopefully you enjoyed that Thursday night football game. It was probably real good. That would be my expectation.
Yeah. Well, now that you said that and we're pre-recording this, it's going to be the worst game of all time.
Yeah. Honestly, I would not be shocked if the Cardinals just blew the doors off the Giants. I mean, the
Packers.
The Packers, yeah.
You say that now, and Rodgers threw 6 touchdowns.
To who?
Amari Rodgers, Robert Tonyan, and Aaron Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Who each?
I don't think that's happening, bro.
Yeah, I'd probably put money on the Cardinals.
But anyway, yeah, so we're going to go through trade targets for Week 8 on this episode, and then send you on your merry way for the weekend to enjoy all of the things that you enjoy on the weekend. So yeah, before we do that, check our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the places. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platform, please leave a review, share this pod with your friends, and then check us out on YouTube as well, if you're not watching already. If you're watching on YouTube, though, click the bell for notice, and then like and comment down below any questions you have about, you want us to grade your trades? We'll grade your trades, okay?
Yeah.
But anyway, without further ado, let's get into trade targets for Week 8. I really wish I had a drop for that, like a musical. What do they even call it? A bumper, musical bumper, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Something fun for me to play, so that people can be intrigued by our transition into a new segment.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, let's jump into our trade targets. What say you, bud?
Yeah, we could do it.
I guess we could do it. So let's start with the number one guy on the list, which is Jerry freaking Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy, in case you don't remember, got hurt like 42 weeks ago.
Yep.
And it was an ankle sprain. Is that correct? Or
yeah, high ankle. It was a bad ankle sprain.
Yeah. And so he's been on IR for about, is it 7 weeks now? 6 weeks, 7 weeks? And he will be coming off IR. So he has been practicing, and they say he looks good in practice. He was one of, I think he was not with CD Lamb, but he was one of those guys that was like a cheaper CD Lamb coming into this season that could be really good. In his first game of the season before he got hurt, he had 7 targets and 6 catches for 72 yards in 2 quarters. And so he was looking real good. He was looking real sweaty over here. I was starting to get a little bit hyped up.
I was getting sweaty.
I was getting real sweaty. But this is your opportunity, right? This is one of those guys that hasn't had playing time yet. You're not really sure what you're going to get. It's similar to Micah Thomas, right? Where the guy's coming back at some point, and you're going to see him play. And the value on him is just bottom basement, not that much. Like, and I don't know. Maybe somebody in your league is obsessed with Jerry Jeudy, and they're just like, nope, not trading him. Not even for Mahomes. Not even for a running back by the, like an RB2. They're just holding on to Jerry Jeudy but I don't think people are doing it. I think they're like, okay, this guy really hasn't done anything for me lately. And you might be able to get him on the cheaps. Because I think the second he plays, is he playing this week against Washington?
Yes, he's expected to.
Okay, so with him coming back this week against Washington, who has been a really good matchup, I think it's going to be good things for Jerry Jeudy, and I think there's going to be, a good progression, if you will, in that area. So I think he's gonna get 10 targets. He's going to be really good, and we should, be excited about him. Maybe he doesn't play full. Like, do you anticipate him playing a full gamut of snaps in his first game?
I don't know. I don't think they would return. I mean, it might not be 100% 100%, but he'll play at least enough where I think can be productive.
Okay. But yeah, I think with all that in mind, I think it's definitely a good trade target. He's cheap. Like at the wide receiver position too, I don't know how many people are like looking for wide receivers. So, and I think down the stretch here, I think he could be a good wide receiver to have. But anyway.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah, no, I mean, I love the player. And I think before the season, the hype was that he had a connection with Teddy Bridgewater too.
Mm-hmm.
As of right now, Teddy Bridgewater is still the starting quarterback there. So that's good. It feels like they might have a connection right away. He was doing fantastic before he got hurt. I think he can just come right back into the situation. And yeah, but still, I think he can come back into the situation and be there. Maybe even wide receiver 1 on that team. The only thing that concerns me is really doesn't have anything to do with Jeudy. It's more just the offense as a whole and like how good are the Broncos?
I think they're a better offense than they were with Drew Lock.
I mean, are they like?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe a little bit.
With Drew Lock, like, they blew.
They went from like a bottom 5 offense to like
bottom 15.
Like, yeah. They're probably like they probably went from like the 28th ranked offense to like the 21st ranked offense, which yes is better, but still not great. But yeah, no, I think Judy's. It's a great time to trade for him because the team owner took him in like the 6th, 7th round. Probably is like, he had a decent first game, got hurt. I've kept him, but he's not anything special. And you could trade for him, and he ends up being like a top 15 wide receiver. Yeah,
and that's going to be real good, especially if you're in a multi-flex league. It's definitely helpful to have that on your team. You ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get on to the next guy, which is T. Higgins. Of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, he has, I don't know if he's been on our list before. He might have been. I don't remember.
Not sure.
But he is also a guy that had just come back from injury. He played the last 3 weeks, and he's been relatively disappointing. He's 7-5-9 in, I believe, PPR leagues. And he just hasn't been that great. He's got the Jets coming up this week, which is, I guess a decent matchup. But he also hasn't played, like, first 2 games of the season, he had 74% snap percentage against Minnesota, and then he had a 91% snap percentage against Chicago, and had 13-13. Since then, he's had 70, 57, and 67. So I don't know if there's, like, a lingering impact of the injury that they're just easing him back in or what it is, but Higgins has come back, and he's not been producing as much fantasy-wise. Now, he had 15 targets this past week.
Yeah.
15 targets. That's a 1-5. Some guys don't get that over the course of 3 weeks.
Chase, wasn't it?
It might have been.
It was more than Chase.
And so the big thing with T. Higgins is that if he continue, I don't think he's going to get 15 targets a game, obviously. I mean, Amari Cooper, what did he have? 17, 18 the first game, and he hasn't had over 10
and then since then he's had, exactly.
So, like, this is not an indicator of a trend until it happens multiple weeks, but I think that 8 or 9 targets a week is a very good projection for T. Higgins, and I think he's not going to continue having these bad games, over the stretch of time. I think he's a good buy right now because I think the manager who has him is probably not too excited about what's been going on, fantasy points wise, and you can snag him and for cheap and hopes that he does have a similar situation to Jeudy where down the stretch he ends up being really good for your team. His schedule is not great down the stretch, but I think it's something that you can deal with, and I think Higgins will be fine.
Yeah, he's one of those perfect, I think, buy low options because of he was decent to start, then he got hurt, so that kind of annoyed the fantasy manager. And then last 3 weeks, since coming back from the injury, he hasn't put up fantasy numbers, and they're willing to pretty much trade him pretty cheap. I think in most cases, most redraft leagues, a lot of teams are willing to part ways from T. Higgins for not a lot, and you can get him at the cheap, and that's solid value for someone who could be your flex week to week, or if you have 2 flexes, one of them. Because even in the 3 weeks that he hasn't performed well fantasy-wise and hasn't had that 91% snap percentage, still had 7 targets, 6 targets, 15. 6 is his lowest in the 3 stretch, which isn't awful. Like he's getting targeted still. He got targeted more than Jamar Chase this week, who, by the way, we had on this show a while ago. Hope you listened to us. He's been phenomenal. But even with Chase doing what he can do, there's still room for T. Higgins to play well, because the guys who've been getting touchdowns is like C.J. Uzomah has 2 touchdowns. Chris Evans, the running back, had a touchdown. Like, that's not going to happen. T. Higgins and even Tyler Boyd are going to start to get more involved in the red zone. And I'm going to start putting up bigger fantasy numbers, but especially T. Higgins, because he is, I think, the number 2 wide receiver on that team.
Agreed. And I think the big thing is that you want to chase volume, and that 15 targets is just, that's sexy. So anyway, let's move on to the next guy, David Montgomery, another guy that's about to come off the injury. Or is he on IR? Yeah, he's on IR. So he's about to come back from injury soon. He won't be activated this week, but it's going to happen in the next couple weeks. And we know what David Montgomery is. Khalil Herbert's been good in his absence, but you plug a decent running back into this scheme and into the team that has a decent offensive line, at least rushing wise, then the guy's going to be good. David Montgomery on the season had 18, 9, 6, and 22 in 4 games. And that was a confusing offensive situation, not really knowing who the quarterback was or what was going on. So I think for David Montgomery, he is really good. I think that there's a good chance that Monty can get back into the game, be fine. I think that, obviously we're going to have to wait and see in terms of when he comes off IR. I think it's going to be this week, or not this week, obviously, but next week or the week after. And then I think there's going to probably be a week of limited play or limited production because they're just trying to ease him back in, and then they'll let him go. So it might be 2 to 3 weeks before you get the value back on David Montgomery, but I think him coming off IR at this point is a really good indication of, him coming back, obviously, and providing for your fantasy team. So I would go out, try to get him now before the crap hits the fan and he comes back and then he starts dominating in the second half of the season like he did last year.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think you could also convince whoever has Montgomery that Herbert is the new starter and is going to take over.
That is fair.
Maybe not really convince them of that, but at least put it in the back of their mind, plant a seed.
Then they might be splitting snaps.
Yeah. I do think Herbert's earned himself a job. Like, he's better than Damian Williams. But he's not going to completely take over from Montgomery at all. Montgomery, when he comes back and is healthy, is going to be the starter. And he was decent in the beginning of the season, like you said.
Right.
And again, running backs are so valuable. I think he's another good buy low option you can't buy him for dirt cheap like I think you could Higgins, but cheaper than you could have definitely in the beginning of the season. And I would buy him before he comes back, because I think once he comes back, he's going to put up good numbers. It'll be harder to trade for him.
Fair enough. Let's talk about the fourth guy, and we have some running backs on this list, which is good this week. Last week, I think we had 1 running back, 1 tight end, and then 16 wide receivers.
Yeah.
Which is I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
This is an interesting one, though. This is kind of a.
Yeah, this is something that. Maybe I'll let Rick start with this one because I'm interested to hear his thoughts on it. But yeah, it's Antonio Gibson from the Washington football team. Go ahead, Rick.
So let me make the negative points first.
Yeah.
There was a report the other day by Fantasy
points.
Pros saying that this is going to be a season-long problem, his shin injury that he's been battling.
Since training camp?
Yeah, it's been. Apparently it's gotten worse. And the last 2 weeks, they've, instead of sitting him and resting him, they played him, and he had a 39% snap percentage and a 42% snap percentage, which to me is dumb. I would have just sat him until put him on a 3-week IR, goes through the bye week, and then see how he feels after that. But Washington he's trying to play through it. And it's kind of disgusting week to week. This past against the Chiefs, he had 3 points. Against the Packers, he had 6. So the fantasy manager sees that report, I think, about Gibson and panics and says he's only going to get 5 points a week. Rest of the season, I got to get rid of this guy while he still has value. And that, is a real, I think, possibility of happening. But it's still Antonio Gibson. As long as he's getting 15 touches a game still, and even though he's battling an injury, I think he can still play well enough to where he's not going to put up 5 points a game. As long as he's playing, he's going to start putting up better games. I still believe like the player is good. You believe in the talent. Mm-hmm. It is definitely a risky one. This is the riskiest one by far on this list, but at the price that you can get him right now, and again, considering the depth at running back, it's worth the risk.
Yeah. I think the shin injury is really scary, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
And like all these guys we've been talking about for fantasy football, usually what I tell people, and if you listen to our show in the off season, you don't want to chase injuries. You don't want to find guys that are currently injured. And on this show, we just talked about Jerry Jeudy, who's coming off injury. David Montgomery's coming off injury. So it's like, it sounds like we're telling you to chase injury. But when we talk about that, we're talking about it in the context of draft season, right? If a guy has an injury in training camp, that usually leads to especially hamstring or ankle, that usually leads to them missing a lot of time during the season and not performing at the level that you would anticipated them playing. So when we talk about that, we're talking mostly about breakouts instead of established guys who've already played. If you get a mid-season injury, last year we saw Nick Chubb get hurt for 6 weeks, come back and be as ridiculous as he was when he was before he got hurt. So
yeah,
I think mid-season, it depends on the type of injury. And clearly for Gibson, this shin thing is a problem. Hopefully it does not carry over after the bye week, because if that happens, then you're going to be a little bit more concerned. But like we said, you have to throw the negative out there in order to get to some kind of positives. Before the injury, before his shin injury that limited him in the last 2 games, he had 10, 8, 16, 14, and 20 through 5 weeks, those first 5 weeks of the season. And he looked pretty matchup proof. This is a guy that got 16 fantasy points against the Buffalo Bills defense, who has given up the 30th least amount of fantasy points, or most, or whatever. I still don't know how to say that. But they're the 30th. They're like one of the toughest matchups for running backs in the NFL. Top 3 toughest matchup.
Right. And
he scored 16 points against them. He went up against New Orleans. I think they're top 5 or 6. And he scored 20 against them. He showed that he's a matchup-proof guy and can perform at a high level. He showed that last year. He showed that this year. He was the RB13, with the exception of that Giants game where it just didn't perform that well. He was the RB13 on the season, averaging 14 points per game, and he actually was really good. He was basically RB1 production, which is similar to what he did last year. And right now you see him with a lower snap percentage, has 3 fantasy points against Kansas City, has 6 fantasy points against Green Bay. And, he's had the opportunity, but the efficiency has just not been there. And I think it's because he's been limited by that injury, obviously. The plus side to this is that if he gets back to healthy, you know what he is. And the fantasy owner that has him on their team is looking at him right now, getting concerned about this shin injury and not really knowing what's going on. And it's a guy that I think the value, I still think he's going to cost a lot to get most likely, but I think the value has gone down on him to the point where he's buyable. He's a guy that you can get on your fantasy team and not really spend a whole ton of money to do it, or I say money, but a whole ton of value, I should say, to do it. So I think while there's some concerns with him, if he does come back after the bye week healthy, then I think you're going to get the Antonio Gibson that I think we know and love. And the big thing is you look at that after the bye week, after the Tampa game and the Carolina game, Seattle, the Raiders, Dallas, Philadelphia, Dallas, Philadelphia. That's easy money.
Yeah, it is.
And I think this is as easy a trade target as you can get, even though it's a risk. Who wins championships?
It is a risk.
The teams with the
You're
balls.
You're right. Yeah.
Make a big move.
No, I do agree, but this is definitely the riskiest one. This one could backfire.
The final guy that we have on this list is DJ Moore. Rick almost broke out in a pure sweat when he when he saw this guy on the list. So go ahead, Rick. Why is this guy a trade target?
Well, through the first 4 weeks of the season, he was the wide receiver like 4 on the seat. Like he was legit.
Yeah, because I'm gonna put this out there. You're talking to a wavering DJ Moore manager.
Oh, is that true? We'll talk after the show. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I need a running back. I'll give you AJ Brown. You can get your guy. I'll take DJ Moore back, and we'll swap running backs, and I get an upgraded running back.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, see, I got you thinking. All right. Anyway, DJ Moore, he was great through the first 4 weeks. Obviously, Sam Darnold has been crap.
It's like the guy in that commercial with the money on a reel. He's like, almost got you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's me right now.
Yeah.
Or actually, technically, it would be you.
It might be.
Through those first 4 weeks, he was awesome. Since then, he has not been good. But if you look at the numbers deeper, he's still been heavily involved. He had 13 targets against Minnesota, 10 this past week against the Giants. It's really just Darnold playing like crap. But as long as he continues to get these targets, the fantasy points will come back. It's not like he's been lost in the offense or someone has emerged. Like he's the clear number. Robbie Anderson blows. Terrace Marshall has potential, but he's a rookie and is not getting involved. They traded Dan Arnold.
Imagine drafting Robbie Anderson in the 8th round.
Yeah, that's gross. DJ Moore is the guy in that offense, and he's going to thrive. I mean, he gets to play Atlanta twice the rest of the season. He's got Miami. He's got Washington. He's got Tampa against that secondary. He has some good matchups coming up. And you can get him. He's still a wide receiver 1, and you can get him right now, probably at wide receiver 2 price.
Yeah. I was going to ask. Gone. I don't remember what I was going to ask.
That's how it is.
Something pertaining to DJ Moore, of course. No, I agree with Rick. Oh, I was going to say, do you think that DJ Moore is going to get do you think getting Christian McCaffrey back is going to improve the offense to the point where DJ Moore starts like providing more production fantasy point wise? Because he's still performing well. It's just the offense blows chunks right now. And
I think that definitely helps. That will 100% help him.
And I think getting McCaffrey back makes the offense better, and it puts them in more opportunities, I guess, to score. And I don't know more about that because you're a Christian McCaffrey manager in multiple leagues. So when is he coming back? Do you know?
Probably week 9 against the Patriots.
Oh, good. That's fantastic. Good news for the Patriots fans among us.
Right.
Just the 2 in the room. But no, I mean, Rick is definitely right. The target share has been the biggest thing about DJ Moore that we love. And it's funny because you look at those first 4 weeks of the season. Obviously, Rick said he was a wide receiver 4 over the first couple weeks and a half PPR. 12, 17, 16, 27. And then he had 2 very, very difficult matchups against Philly and Minnesota, who have been good against wide receivers this year. Really good. And he had 6 and 8 fantasy points. And then against the Giants, he pulled 10 points out of his pants. And now he's got Atlanta, New England, Arizona, Washington, Miami, Atlanta again. And then he has a tough matchup against Buffalo, but then he goes out against Tampa and New Orleans following it. So it's like he has a good schedule down the stretch, and he's got easier matchups coming up. So and like the big thing that makes me sweaty is that target share. Like he's literally averaging 10 targets.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And we talked about a second ago with T. Higgins, and we talked a second ago about Jerry Jeudy being guys that have a lot of volume. 7 targets in the first 2 quarters for Jerry Jeudy to start the season. 15 targets for T. Higgins. DJ Moore has been averaging 10 a game. He hasn't been scoring touchdowns, and that has been concerning, obviously. I think that's just the offense, a lack of production offensively of them being able to move the ball and get the ball down the field. Yeah. The touchdowns will come for DJ Moore. It was like, I think the most he's had on a season is 4, and he has 3 right now. And hopefully he can get back into that touchdown category once, hopefully, maybe this week, I would hope. But I think DJ Moore is going to be fine. He's got that target share, and that's all that matters. Like I know a lot of people are going to get really, really nervous about some of these situations, but getting targeted 10 times a game is massive in fantasy football. That's volume you want at the wide receiver position. And it's not like he blows with the target share. I mean, he has over the last couple of weeks because of the quality of target that Sam Darnold is throwing. But
Right.
when he was earlier in the season when they had McCaffrey, he was catching like 8 passes a game. So chase that volume because that's a really good volume.
Agreed. I mean, you're talking to the DJ Moore owner here. So.
And we will talk after the show, my friend.
Okay.
Because you may have just convinced me to stay with DJ Moore for a little while.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen.
Either way, that's what happens when you have your own fantasy football podcast.
Because if he continues to stink, though, I'm not going to want to trade for him. So.
See, now he's trying to pull a quickie, pull a fast one on me.
No, I'm just saying because you're like
you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but I know the tactics. I know the moves in trades. Anyway, they're your trade targets for Week 8. Jerry Jeudy, T. Higgins, David Montgomery, Antonio Gibson, DJ Moore. Good luck this weekend, guys. Enjoy football.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.